Hello, and welcome to Word on the Reef, a podcast where we take the plunge into one of the world's most spectacular natural wonders, the Great Barrier Reef. Australia is very lucky to be home to the oldest living culture on the planet. Aboriginal people are known to have occupied the Australian mainland for at least 65,000 years and developed sophisticated systems of knowledge and governance. There's incredible diversity amongst the cultures, with more than 250 different language groups across the nation, including 70 traditional owner groups along the coast of the Great Barrier Reef, which includes the Torres Strait Islander people on the islands at the northern end of the reef, in between Australia and Papua New Guinea. Throughout the mists of time, these traditional owners visited the reefs and islands in canoes and built complex stone enclosures to trap fish. Some of these fish traps are still in use today, including one about 2 hectares in size in the Hinchinbrook Channel, about 2 hours' drive south of Cairns. The depth of some of the enclosures indicate they were probably built when the sea levels were lower. In other words, more than 6,000 years ago, which would make them older than the pyramids of Egypt. Environmental protection is inseparable from First Nations justice. The well-being of Indigenous people is closely tied with the well-being of the environment, as they fight to protect their traditional land and sea from the impacts of industrialisation, mining and climate change. One of those inspiring First Nations leaders is my guest today, Malachi Johnson, a Gooreng Gooreng traditional owner from Bundaberg at the southern end of the Great Barrier Reef, about 375 kilometres north of Brisbane. A powerful experience with sea country at the age of 14 inspired Malachi to dedicate his life to protecting and researching sea turtles. From there, he's gone on to be a leader and champion in all aspects of reef protection and Indigenous self-determination. He also runs his own podcast channel called Reefcast, which presents 100% Indigenous perspectives on the reef, and I highly recommend you check it out. Today, we're meeting Malachi outdoors on country, besides a gentle running stream and a forest filled with singing birds and chirping insects. During this chat, you'll hear us referring to country, which is a term commonly used by Indigenous Australians to encompass the whole natural environment, including land, sea, and sky. You'll also hear Malachi referring to mob, which means people, particularly Indigenous people. And you'll hear him referring to himself and people as Murri, spelled Murri, a term used by several Indigenous groups living in Queensland and northwestern New South Wales. You'll sometimes hear traditional owners referred to as TOs for short. And you'll also hear a lot of other complicated acronyms like GBROMPA, the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, and DES, the Department of Environment and Science, and a bunch of other acronyms too, but don't stress about trying to remember them. Just remember that there are a ton of organisations involved in reef research and management, and all of them have historically been set up and governed by non-Indigenous people. Malachi is extremely inspiring and knowledgeable, and outside of his own channel, Reefcast, he does very few interviews. So I'm really excited to be able to share this chat with you today, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Good morning, Malachi. How are you?
Good morning, Galangiri, as we say in my language.
Okay, so before we start today, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we're meeting on today. We're at Smithfield, so I believe we're on Irukandji and Jabagai country, so I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So Malachi, tell us a bit about yourself. Who are you and what do you do? I think you do a lot of things, so can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name's Malachi Johnson, born and bred in Bundaberg, so PCCC, Port Curtis, Coral Coast region, Gooreng Gooreng country. Shared country there with also Taberlang Bunda, Bailey and Gooreng people. But born and bred in Bundaberg. I'm the youngest of a large family, currently 8 of us there in my family. And I do a lot of things, wear a lot of hats. But I guess I'm passionate about the Great Barrier Reef and seeing the self-determination return to mob. And then have a lot of other hobbies and stuff, I guess, on the side too, so yeah.
Yeah, I think you are being a bit modest because I know you're on a lot of committees and a lot of consultation groups. Can you just briefly list some of the things that you're involved in?
I think the ones that mean a lot to me is definitely the United Nations Global Indigenous Youth Caucus. I'm the Pacific focal point for that. I've been there now for about 3 years now. Also, the Reef 2050 Trish Steering Group. I'm the youth male representative for that, and the Reef Advisory Committee. Yeah, I'm the male Trish representative on that as well. But then also, we have the Great Barrier Reef Foundation's Healthy Water Technical Working Group, and the list goes on. There's more than my fingers on my hands on the committees that I sit on.
You're a very busy man. So can you tell us a bit more about where you grew up and where your country is?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm from Bundaberg, small sugarcane town. It's the most southern point of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. Next to Gladstone and next to, I guess, further south of us, like Childers, Harvey Bay, Butler country. So I grew up very, very low social economic environment. My parents did the best with what they could, but given the circumstances and I guess the social status of Indigenous people in that time and era, back in the early 90s, living in the houses that I live in now, it wasn't really an option for us, and the economy wasn't thriving either for mob back in that little small town. So I grew up pretty poor, shared a lot of rooms, shared a lot of meals and stuff. So to me, I had the greatest life. But when I reflect that as an adult, I see that my country and our government put us in a system that f***ed us over. So I look at it now, and I guess that's a bit of the fuel that's in my passion. But yeah, to make sure that mob don't have to live like I did, the way I lived, and I won't go into all the things. But I was surrounded by drugs, alcohol, violence, gangs, and it wasn't until I got a bit older, to my teenage years, where country played a large role. Milby, our sea turtle, which played a large role in my, I guess, a rites of passage for me to turn into the younger version of the Malachi that I am now through high school, that advocate and that leader and that cultural spirituality that I really tapped into. It really helped me through high school, teenage years, and it also just gave me a sense of belonging.
Wow, can you tell us a bit more about that journey with reconnecting with country and how it helped you on your journey to where you are today?
I mean, look, I wouldn't say it's reconnecting, but country's our first teacher, and as students, I guess like anything in life, if we're not paying attention and listening, well then, yeah, we're not going to learn the lessons. And I guess it took me until the age of 14 to learn the country. Country, as I said, is our first teacher, and it provides us with indicators. These insects we can hear now, these indicators that let us know about seasonal changes. They let us know about what's happening in the weather. And that's what happened to me when I was 14 years old, New Year's Eve. I was at a local beach, my favourite place in home, back on country, called Innes Park Beach. And Milby came out of the water on sundown. Big mother turtle, big female turtle, loggerhead turtle. She came out of the water, out of the wave break, onto the sandbank, and she jumped into the inlet. And there's something about me, I looked at it and I said, I want to jump on it. And I look at it now and think, I shouldn't do that now. But but yeah, it was a lesson that country was saying. The country needed me to feel the power and the force of her. Like I remember when I grabbed onto her shell and she took me onto the waves, and the sheer power from each slap of her front flippers, and you could just feel her pull, and then I could feel the salt water, hit me, the wave break hit me, and I kind of just I got lost in it, and all I remember is my mother's voice yelling out, let go, and then before I knew it, I was past the wave break, and here I was stuck out in the water now. Murray couldn't swim then either too, So I was like, oh geez, what do I do? But country, it's like the scene in Moana, country just helped me, took me in, gave me a good little push with the waves, and Murray was back in the inlet then. But from that moment I said to my mother, I want to work with turtles. I want to look after Milby, and I guess that was the first lesson that I listened to country give me, because she's trying to give me many lessons growing up, but because I was blinded by the Western lifestyle, it wasn't until I was about 14 when I realised just how important country was to me, and my cultural obligation as a traditional owner to look after country.
Wow, that's an amazing story. So just to clarify for any listeners who might be international or unfamiliar with the terminology, Australian First Nations people commonly refer to their land and sea as country, but it's a lot more than just an area on a map. What does country mean to you?
Country means to me, it's life, hey. It's what we're surrounded in now, it's the trees. Country is land, sea, air, sky, earth, underground. It's all the living things here and the non-livings. My father used to tell me, he said, son, the reef is our nervous system. It's made up of land, sea, sky, animals, and the people. And the people, we are the issue, but we're also the solutions. and we've got to look after our siblings, because we're related to this plant here, this tree, this life. We're related to it, and you and I, as Indigenous and non-Indigenous, we're related too. We're siblings. So it's our responsibility to care for Mum. Because Sea Country's our mum, and our dad is the son. And if Dad is angry, Dad creates the temperature in the house. And we're all siblings. If we're mucking up, just like in a normal household, growing up here in Australia. But if you're mucking up, Dad get a bit wild, Dad get angry. So he punishes us. And obviously Mum, she's a protector. So Mum tries to protect us, Sea Country, she's our protector and our provider. And if Dad creates an unsettlement or unsettled temperature in the house, well then Mum can't provide for us. And that's what we've seen over the last 50 years through the Western methodologies and practices of science and research on our country, that they're, as our younger siblings, as non-Indigenous people, you're our younger siblings to us. As Indigenous people, as First Nations, we're the older siblings. But the younger siblings have, they've disturbed the house, they've mucked up the house, and it's made Dad angry. So Dad's now, he's punishing us. And so it's up to us now as the kids to kind of, come together, start listening, looking after Mum, so Mum can, and to calm Dad down, So we've got to make sure that house is stable and sustainable. And so it's our job now, and podcasts like yourself and like ours is one way of providing that sustainability through education and through word, through message, to let people know that it's our responsibility as traditional owners or not, but as siblings and as custodians to look after country. And we've seen those effects with climate change, and we've seen it with the heat, El Niños and all that stuff, the rising sea levels and all that stuff. So that's just Dad, angry inside the house. So it's our job and responsibility, it's our obligation, it's my cultural obligation to to educate more mob and non-Indigenous mob to know their roles and responsibilities and their obligations to country.
Absolutely, that's a really beautiful analogy. So we know that traditional owners took care of land and sea country in Australia for tens of thousands of years, and it was in a really good condition at the time of European arrival. Even though there was hunting of marine species, their populations were taken care of, so they were sustainable for tens of thousands of years. But unfortunately nowadays, many of those species are endangered. What do you think are the biggest threats to the reef?
Our government. Our Australian government, like they tell white lies, they tell one story. If you look back less than 100 years ago, like the turtle canneries on Heron Island, like that's what happened to the turtle population. It wasn't overhunting. Yeah, sure, climate change and I guess recreational use and whatnot. I think Gakakun likes that joke too about the government too. You're laughing in the back here. For
those who couldn't hear, there was the kookaburra laughing in the background. What's the word for kookaburra again?
In my language, it's Gakakun. But I just think there's always three sides to every story, his, hers, and the truth type thing. And we're only hearing, the government side of things or a Western perspective. TOs are the easiest person to point the finger at. We've got politicians who just point the finger at, well, if they stop eating it, well, then it won't be endangered or, critically threatened. I'm like, well, nah. You got to look at the last, the history of it, the build-up of it. And there's, turtle canneries. There was, with the massive fishing, netting and whatnot, So, and even to this day, we have like solutions for it, like turtle release valves and stuff and netting. But, when's enough going to be enough? Until there's no more turtles left?
Yeah, for those listeners who aren't familiar with some of that background, there was a turtle soup factory back on Heron Island which killed, countless turtles, just pulling the mother turtles off the beach and shipping off hundreds of thousands of cans of turtle soup. And this was something that happened as a result of colonisation. Luckily, that practice stopped in the 1920s, but now we've got other problems caused by Western industrialisation. Like Malachi was saying, we've got climate change, which heats up turtle eggs on the beaches. It impacts on the seagrass, which turtles and dugongs need to eat. We've also got, like Malachi was saying, commercial fishing, where these animals get entangled, and a lot more plastic pollution. And these are all problems these are the causes why marine species are endangered nowadays, whereas they were in a very healthy populations prior to European arrival.
If I can expand on, when I mean the government, it's the legislation and policies that we're bound by. That, they don't recognise native title in some states, New South Wales, we have issues down there with native title and human rights. And then also our government says they're going to support climate crisis issues around the world or in the South Pacific, but yet they're taking the Torres Strait 8 to court. You know, that's our own mob. That's our mob. You know, they will never give us autonomy or self-determination, or they won't give us our land back. You know.
Yeah, can you tell us a bit, or the listeners a bit more about the Torres Strait 8 case?
I mean, I encourage everyone to go check it out, but like, you know, I guess briefly, like, they've asked for help with the rising sea level and the climate crisis issues there, and you know, the government ignored them for so long, and then they went through UNDRIP, you know, the United Nations Declaration of Rights for Indigenous Peoples, which triggered them to give a response. And Scott Morrison, our former Prime Minister, said, you know, he's not going to take responsibility, or Australia won't take responsibility of a climate crisis that's not caused by us. That's not the answer that we're looking for. That's not good leadership. That's not looking after mob and looking after country. And yeah, these mob have been taken to court, you know, like they're fighting a battle to get that support. So yeah, I really encourage everyone to go check it out, you know, the Torres Strait 8, check out UNDRIP and check out the responses from our former Prime Minister. And
Yeah, so just to explain some of the background, the Torres Strait Islands are really low-lying, and some of the traditional significant sites have been basically washed away by rising sea levels, and that's why people from those islands have been trying to get some action on that from the Australian government, and that's what we're talking about now.
The Australian government like to tokenise us. You know, they'll send the Torres Straits over to international conferences and promote how we work with TSI, mob, but then when it comes push to shove to help fight for our rights, oh no, they see them as a separate like entity or a separate country, you know, kind of thing. Like, and I know there's great people and individuals in government, but it's the legislation, right? It was written by white fellas for white fellas to hold black fellas back. You know, we've got immense history and evidence of that. We've seen it through the Act. Just recently they said no, they voted no against the yes vote for the referendum. I probably won't see another referendum in my lifetime. And then just recently as well, they said no to the Coalition and Labor came together to vote no against the bill for the United Nations Universal Declaration of Rights for Indigenous Peoples that Senator Lydia Thorpe got through, you know. So it just shows, one after another, what the so-called leaders of this country think of black mob, you know, self-determination, and, you know, they don't want to do it. If you look at the native title, right, you know, over 608 pages of native title, you know, you got all these acts that tell you how many rights we don't have, because in every act has a sub-act which has a loophole for the white Australian government to still control us. It's about control and power, and like I said earlier, you know, we're the older siblings. And when you look at me, I'm a 30-year-old man. Oh, Malcolm, what are you talking about, the older sibling? I'm older than you. No, well, I carry my ancestors on my back, and I stand on the shoulders of my elders, and I keep the front of my path is clear, because that's my legacy to build. So that's what I mean by we're the older siblings. I'm not coming to you as a 30-year-old man. I'm coming to you with thousands and time immemorial of knowledge and sea country, you know, stories and history there, and trauma. And that's what I mean by we're the older siblings. Because, yeah, our people walked, swam, fished, and lived this country long before settlement, you know, colonisation happened. And Australia needs to wake up to themselves and really listen to that story. I love being Australian. Don't get me wrong, I love it. However, this was stolen land. And if Australia can't recognise that, they may acknowledge it, but they need to recognise it. If they can't recognise it, well then what are we doing telling ourselves this lie? We have an opportunity, as all Australians right now, to write the fourth chapter of Australian history. I look at it as in pre-colonisation, we've got colonisation. Chapter 3 was, you know, the stolen generation. Now you and I, sis, we have that, you know, and all Australians now, we have this opportunity to write the next chapter of Australian history. We need to ask ourselves, what do we want the readers or the viewers of our chapter in 100 years, what do we want them to reflect and take what message do we want to take away in 100 years' time when they look at this chapter that we're writing now, through this podcast, through my podcast, through the works that we do on this reef, through works that we do on country. We talk about solidarity and unification. Well, it needs to come through recognition, it needs to come through understanding, and it needs to come through respect. Once we can have those three things in this country, I think that's a footpath, or, you know, the step in the right direction to a better country.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it. We have an opportunity to have a really good future of working together, collaborating, learning from First Nations wisdom, and yeah, there will be no environmental justice without First Nations justice. So we know that taking care of country helps the environment, but country also takes care of people, doesn't it? So how is country significant for the spiritual and cultural well-being of the people?
Yeah, so country's they're not two separate things. Country and people, they're one. We're symbiotic. we're the same thing. We are country. We come from this country. We come from Earth. We die. We get put back in Earth. Western perspectives need to stop viewing it as a separate entity or a separate thing. Country is us and we're country. Country is our lifeblood. The reef is my lifeblood. Only 70 clans on the Great Barrier Reef can say that they're traditional owners of the Great Barrier Reef. So to me, understanding where you've come from to know where you got to go is very important for these younger mob to know, and understanding that country is not separate to who we are. Country is our cultural identity. Without country, we have no cultural identity. Without the Great Barrier Reef, I have no cultural identity. We talk about a cascading effect in my mob. But let's use cots, for example. So we have a cots outbreak, crown thorn starfish. So we have massive outbreaks on our reef. Part of the issue is we've let fishing, recreational or commercial, become such a normalised thing that it's taken away the natural predators of certain species that have accumulated the reef in a negative way. Once you take away the natural predators, those cots start damaging our reef and eat our reef. Once we lose the coral reefs, we lose the species that live in it and use it as a natural habitat, the fish and whatnot. Once we lose the fish, we lose the ability as traditional owners to practice our cultural law and customs, fishing practices and whatnot. And then also our sea ceremonies, whereas burials and whatnot, initiations. Once we lose that, then we lose our cultural identity. And once we lose our cultural identity, then what are we? It's a cascading effect that mob need to understand, and also non-Indigenous mob need to recognise that it's more than just one thing. Country is everything. Like I said, it's all things living and non-living. It's things that are, the sky country, the air, the ground here. Like, it all plays an effect. It's all one thing. Once we destroy or disturb one of them, it affects the whole nervous system that my father talked about before, the nervous system, Once we destroy that nervous system, well then, it's critical damage for our body, because that's why we are all one. So country to me is one. It's not two separate things, it's one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. From a scientific perspective, coral reefs are crucial for life in our oceans, and oceans are ultimately essential for the survival of the whole human race. So both from a scientific perspective and a cultural and spiritual perspective, we're all intertwined with the natural environment.
What do you think connects us all to the world? Salt water. Water is our lifeblood. My mentor, Malcolm Mann, taught me this when I first started working under him as a mentee. He said, son, we're born in water, we come from water, we live as water, and when we die, we become water as the spirits. And that has been a major direction piece for me. Every time I walk on someone's country, my country, or another country where I do a lot of international travel, I always go connect to water, because I know that wherever I may be at, some port, some harbour, some ocean, some creek inlet, I know that when I wash myself and talk to that country, I know that when I put my sweat into that country and let country know who I am, so country can read my intention, why I'm there, and read my intention on my heart, I know that sweat travels back to my home through Yulugu spirit, through our Yulugu, our Nguru Yulugu, which is our salt water spirit. And I know that no matter where I am, as long as there's water, fresh or salt, that country is there for me. And it's very important that people understand that, water is our lifeblood.
Do you think non-Indigenous people can also develop a connection with country, or a better connection with country? And if so, what are some of the ways they can foster that connection?
Definitely, 100%. We're, like I said, non-Indigenous people are custodians as well. Like I said, you're the younger siblings. You can't change what happened, but you can change the future. You can respect what happened. And the way to I guess, better connect is to sit with country. Get away from technology, get away from your phones. I mean, they play a part, right, in education, technology does. But there's nothing better than immersing yourself in country where your feet are in the dirt or in the sand, you're grounding yourself, floating in the water, knowing that you may, at any moment, country may do with what she wants with you. If you're floating in the open ocean, one of your siblings might come get you, eat you up, or she might drown you, or she might send you on a journey. You understand? So letting yourself come to terms that country is our provider, but she's also our maker. And you know what I mean? She can give us life and she can take it away. We think as humans that because we are so advanced in technology and using tools, that we're in control. Yet just recently we had the cyclones. Everyone went to panic mode because we know that we can't control the cyclone. Yeah, so that's this country acting out and talking to us, letting us know, hey, I'm still the boss. You need to recognise it. These are indicators. So for non-Indigenous people to, I guess, connect better with country, it's immerse yourself in country. Get away from the phones. Go sit down in your local forest, in a park, on the beach, riverbank, in a creek bed. Immerse yourself in it. Sit there for an hour. Just breathe. Listen to all the sounds, Use your senses, use your nose. What can you smell? Use your ears. What can you hear? And, when you've done that, open your eyes. What can I see? Because in 100 years' time, if we continue the path that we're going through with development, infrastructure, and, technology, these siblings won't be here no more. Soon we'll be buying oxygen to breathe, that's if we continue this path. And it's not a good thing, right? It's an unnatural path that we're taking. So I think we need to get back to country, or get back to nature, as people, non-Indigenous people would call it. Getting back to nature, just immersing yourself in that, and also going to meet your traditional owners. Every place, city, town, suburb, state or territory in this country has traditional owners. Whether or not they have, through a Western perspective, their native title, it doesn't matter. They are traditional owners. They are the First Nations people. Go meet them. Sit down with them. Pay your respects to them. Acknowledge, and recognize their trauma. Sit down with them and learn from them. We are so connected. The sound of that water running, lets me know I feel safe. If I was in a room, I'd feel out of place, But this is my classroom. It's really important to connect to country, and let country do with you what she wants, and accept her, her actions and consequences that she gives you, because she may have to punish you briefly for you to understand your wrongdoings.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we as humans need to connect with Mother Earth.
Never do, Mother Earth.
Never do.
Never do.
Yeah, I think people in the world are experiencing unwellness, a lot of mental health issues from people living on their phones or surrounded by brick walls all the time. There's so much evidence that getting out in nature is so crucial for people's well-being.
It's our lifestyle, and I'll share two scenarios. One was I met a good friend of mine. He's a shaman from Colombia, and he said to me, Malachi, the issue we have is they live in the village, in the Amazon and whatnot, and he says the younger ones now go into the city, then they become ill from the lifestyle of the city, whether it's through drugs, alcohol, the food. They go there and they get sick, and then the Western solution is, here we have medicine for that sickness. So then they become reliant on the medicine. Then they become addicted to the medication, and then they're spending most of their income on medications for an unnatural diet or lifestyle that's not theirs. Now I'll share one with me personal.
I just want to do a disclaimer that this podcast should not be taken as medical advice.
Yeah, so recently, September 4th, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. It was just my lifestyle. I was becoming lazy. I became entitled. To Western society. I thought, I've got to go home and have a drink. After I worked a big day today, I need to go have a beer. And then all that stuff. I work a lot, I travel a lot, so eating this takeaway food. And it wasn't until I guess it was nothing like a diagnosis like that made me upset with myself, because I let down myself, my family, but my ancestors, everything that they fought for and sacrificed, and what was forced upon them to give me the lifestyle that I have now. So in the last 3 months, I've lost over 28 kilos.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, all naturally, right? And the more you get to know me, you know that my mentality is, it's a very strong one now. Now, it's always been there. I just had to reawaken it. And we call it Thulba, warrior spirit. I'm very selective and very cautious of what I put in my body now, because, as you said in your question today, country is a reflection of its people, and people are a reflection of country. So I now choose to eat only what comes from country. I am just eating what country provides me. Sure, I make exemptions when I'm traveling, and if I need to buy fruit, but if I can grow it, farm it myself, well then I'll do it. You know what I mean? It's that type of lifestyle, and it's just grounding yourself and understanding. Country is all we need. She's all we need. And this GP, when I went back after my 3-month checkup, I went from a 10.9 sugar level back down to like 5.9. You know, like I was not even in diabetic range. I have a tattoo on my wrist, and it says the 3 principles that got me through everything. It says discipline, consistency, and commitment. The discipline is doing the things I don't want to do, but knowing I have to do them because of the right thing. So that is, like I told you before the podcast, I wake up at 4 o'clock every morning and I run. I just run. Running is also a spiritual thing for me to connect to country. Where I run on country, I immerse myself around nature when I run, around coastlines, whatever. It's about having discipline to do those things you don't want to do. And pretending that you love it, even if you don't. But the consistency is showing up every day. No matter the circumstances in my life, I lead a very busy lifestyle. But I make sure I show up every single day to look after my body. I only get one of it. And I now realize I have lots of eyes on me, young eyes, look up to me. And setting a standard is important to me. And that standard is getting back to those healthier choices, those healthier lifestyles. The last one is commitment. Well, that's a more personal, that's a commitment to myself. In life, if you can never commit or make a commitment to anyone else, you must make a commitment to yourself. And the commitment I made to myself on September 4th was I will never harm myself or my body or my yuragu, my spirit, with nutrition or any bad life choices. So that's the commitment that I've made to myself now since September. It's February now. Like I said, I've lost all this weight. I've become so much healthier. My mentality has become clearer. My yuragu has become a lot stronger. I went home to country for 1 week. Just last week I was back home in Bundaberg and Monrepo, Turtle Rookery, where it all started for me, with Turtle there. And I reconnected, I recharged myself, and I'm ready for the new year, right? But it's so simple. Country is our first teacher. She teaches us everything with indicators. As students, we must listen to her lessons. And that's what I've chose to do now. Listen to her lessons. For the last 10 years, I was skipping class, if you can say, you want to use that. I was skipping class, wasn't listening to her. I was listening to, the naughty kids, and I made the bad lifestyle choices. But now, I'm grateful that country didn't give up on me. It's like country is a religion. Cultural law and customs is my Bible. Country is my church. And my elders and ancestors are my angels. So it is a religion. It's a lifestyle. And it's our obligation to live it and to keep it alive, because it was unwillingly stolen from us, taken from us, and they don't want to give it back because they don't want to own up to the bad things that their ancestors did to our ancestors, and for the bad things that they're still doing to us, through the subtle genocide. And the subtle genocide comes through legislation. What's written on paper is the way they're doing it. They may not be cutting us and whipping us and chaining us up, and I know still some of that stuff goes on, but at the massive scale that it used to, they may not be doing it like that no more, but they're doing it more subtle. And there's a subtle genocide in this country that we need to face and we need to stop. And that's through legislation. Give us our rights. It's our inherent rights to be landowners of the land, the sea, the sky, all things living and non-living. It's our cultural obligation.
Yeah, absolutely. This country can move forward and be such a better place for everyone that lives here if we can achieve, reconciliation. And like I said, the environment is not going to be at its best condition unless First Nations justice is at its best condition, because they're so intertwined. So we all stand to benefit from reconciliation. So talking about back to the management of the reef, the Reef Authority has been in charge of managing the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park since 1975, but it's only over the past decade that they've begun to collaborate with traditional owners to allow them to manage their own sea country through what's known as a Traditional Use Marine Resources Agreement, or TUMRA for short. So, in brief, can you tell us, what is a TUMRA agreement?
Yeah, look, it doesn't give us the rights to manage our country. And now look, don't get me wrong, I'm a TUMRA manager. I manage the largest TUMRA on the Great Barrier Reef on Dalrymple country. A TUMRA stands for Traditional Use of Marine Resource Agreements, and it's a formal agreement between traditional owners and our Commonwealth and state government, so marine parks and DES, and it's an agreement to manage the traditional use activities in that sea country. However, the TUMRA is a Western management tool that puts blackfellas at the face of it. But it's still a Western management tool. Western legislation, Western governance, and Western approached. Whereas now we have the Trish implementation plan through the Reef 2050 long-term sustainability plan. That is now the future to leading to self-determination. It will support self-determination and autonomy for Trish liners. It was legislated a year ago, and we've just gone into a partnership agreement with the Commonwealth and its partner, the Q, DES and Grumpa. So the Trish Liner implementation plan is the future for Trish liners, and I strongly, if anything you get out of this, I strongly encourage all reef users, all reef goers to become familiar with the Trish Liner implementation plan. We're now in the process of developing a task force which will go out to communities, Trish liner communities, to engage with the Trish liners the correct, proper way through FPIC and through all these other protocols and processes, unlike what government has done. And yeah, where the Trish Liner implementation plan was written for mob by mob, literally. I'm a part of the steering group that helped write the Trish Liner implementation plan, but like I said earlier in the podcast, that plan doesn't just come from me living today. It comes from the last 100 years of knowledge. But if we're looking at a reef timeline, over 30 plus years we've had Trish liners on the reef working with non-Indigenous counterparts, and now it's time. Like I said, we've had over 50 years of management on the reef from a Western perspective and Western methodologies and practices. Well, now it's time. It's just like anything. It's changed. Seasons change. Summer, autumn, spring, winter. But now it's time to go for Trish liner-led management on the reef. We're not saying we don't want Western science. We need Western science because the impacts that are affecting our country come from Western methodologies and Western impacts. So we need Western science. But it's time to let the older siblings start taking the lead and to stop viewing traditional science and traditional knowledge inferior to Western science. They're equal. They're the same. Yeah. Knowledge is science. Science is knowledge. I admire Western science. I'm doing an environmental science bachelor's degree. But I do a degree because I want to understand a Western perspective. See, it's called understanding. Understanding is a key to a lot of things. Having understanding, an open heart, open mind. And so I thought, Malachi, you need to go understand how they view science from a Western perspective and how they view country. Because I know how I do, how TOs do, how mob do. So yeah, I signed up to environmental science this year to learn that perspective because I'm taking the extra effort. I'm making the extra effort to understand, and that's what our government needs to do. They need to understand, They come down, do the photo shoot with us, get a photo of blackfellas and say, in the community with mob. Why don't you come stay there? Why don't you buy a house or rent a house for a year? Live in the community, help the community. Come do the day-to-day chores with us. Yeah, you got a busy lifestyle. So do I have a busy lifestyle. But every chance I get to go back home to the community, that's why I work in community. I can work for government, I can work for UN, but I stay on country. I stay in ground. I stay in the community because community is where it's at, and the middleman. We've got community, we've got legislative, and the middleman, needs to align themselves. And that's what I am now. I've grown to accept that I'm the middleman in some certain aspects. I'm the bridge builder from community to government, and it's a tough job to try and. They say you can't train an old dog new tricks. That's how I feel with these government, dinosaurs in these roles. But they're learning. They're swallowing a hard pill, but they're doing it. And we're seeing some improvements, but we're nowhere near it. Probably won't have for the next 20 years. But they're learning, as long as we have understanding.
Yeah, it's an interesting point about science and traditional knowledge. I've heard about numerous examples where traditional owners knew about something that was happening in the environment, but it wasn't until Western scientists went and did some experiments and rediscovered it that they realised, the traditional owners were right all along.
Right, exactly, and I'll draw this diagram here. Uncle Don Wop from Torres Strait Islands showed me this when I was a young fellow. But you got two circles that overlap, and we call it the sweet spot. So every morning I wake up in my black world. Every day you wake up in your non-Indigenous world. We call it white. And we meet here in the sweet spot every day. The advantage and ability that we have as Trish liners, we can get your education. We've learned your jobs, your technologies, your lifestyles. So, like, yeah, the advantage for us is that, yeah, we have the ability to be able to go from our world to the sweet spot to your world, but you can't come here. And the reason why you can't come in here is because our cultural law, which is LORE, our cultural law protects us. It protects us, and we only share what we want to share. We're not going to give you all the answers, because how are you ever going to grow if you don't learn for yourself? But yeah, so it comes down to growth pains. We look at traditional science as like cultural indicators. So the trichodesma, like the trichae in the water, it's like, what do they call it? The common name is like ocean sawdust. It looks like coral spawn on top of the surface of the water. Well, when we see that on country, that tells us that there's big rain coming. Next time you see forecast that there's rain, I guarantee if you look out on the ocean, you'll see tricha. You see some tricha there. Or if sea turtles lay early, we know that there's big flood coming or big tide coming. Lots of water coming, so they get in early. They're connected to the Earth's magnetic field. They're connected to country. This is the whole symbiotic thing, right? And they get indicators too. And this is where we got to use our indicators. So what we're talking about, I guess, for you to visually understand where I'm coming from is, those two worlds and then that third world, and why we can jump in and jump out, but then, what protects us for you not jumping into there. And why we do it. We need that. We're the oldest living culture on the planet. And, we need to make sure that we preserve and protect it, and that's through our cultural law.
Yeah, we're incredibly lucky in Australia to have the oldest continuous living culture on the planet, and it is really important for us to make an effort to learn about it to what degree we can. So can you sum up some of the things, whether it's under Tumra or a different system, can you sum up some of the things that traditional owners like the Darumbal group are doing to help monitor and protect the reef?
Yeah, look, and full disclaimer, I'm not Darumbal. I only represent Darumbal as a Tumra coordinator. But what I can tell you in the Darumbal Tumra team that we're doing is that we're working towards self-determination. We're having our guys trained up to take over projects on their own country. The sea turtle project on Peak Island's renownedly been, done by researchers for the last 50 years. However, we have an aspiration plan or agreement with threatened species where that will become Darumbal-led in the next 3 years. So, we just had some of our boys trained up now in turtle research and management, and, got me as an experienced turtle researcher. Yeah, so we're looking at self-determination, and we're working towards that, and look, you got rent to pay. Grompa, Des, Ames, Siro, JCU, CQU, everyone, rent is due. You got to start paying TOs, and not just for labour. You got to start paying them for their knowledge, for their experience, for their undivided connection to country. We're not a token. Stop putting us on your name just for ticket list. You want us on your vessels? You pay for the training. You pay for our time. You pay for our knowledge. That's just the bare minimum. We say we want boots on the ground, boats in the water. It's going to be, we're going to have the Black Sea. This Great Barrier Reef World Heritage is going to be the Black Sea in the next 20 years. We're going to have full self-determination over this reef. Tamara's was just one stepping stone to getting to where we are now. Now we have the Trish Line Implementation Plan. That is now this next step to self-determination. And you know what? Some youngsters are going to come up with something else in the next 20 years, and the Trish Line Implementation Plan will just be one stepping stone to the next part of self-determination and autonomy for our mob on this country. Because the reef is our lifeblood, country is us and we are country, and that, self-determination is the way forward, and it's our future, and rent is due with commission. You know what I'm saying?
Amazing to hear about some of the exciting projects that you're working on. I know that different Tumra groups along the coastline are doing things like water quality monitoring, mangrove monitoring.
So we're doing all this same stuff in our country in the Tumra. We're doing seagrass, we're doing coral, we're doing turtles, we have a lot of threatened species. We've got the yellow chatbird. We're doing all the marine managing and all the land management conservation stuff. It all comes down to, blackfellas are the highest trained mob in the country, but they're the least employed. So we're trying to flip that script, where we're doing training, not training for training, but training for employment, and then leading those projects. That's what we're working to. We have people like Jordan, who leads his Indigenous partnership team in Ames, the Australian Institute of Marine Science. Having the right people in these roles is crucial to that self-determination. Jordan is one of those right people. He's there, that brother's there, he's strong brother, he's strong culturally, but he also has that Western degree as well. So he has that understanding. But he understands that country needs its older siblings to start taking the leadership back, and for the younger fellas to, jump in the back seat and watch. We'll show you how it's done. So,
what are some ways that all the people out there who are listening can help support this work? I mean, supporting First Nations justice is supporting the environment, and it is supporting the Great Barrier Reef. So what do you think people can do?
just go sit with the mob. Get to know your mob. It's that simple. Wherever you live, in whatever town you live in, get to know the mob. There's an untapped resource there of knowledge and experience and connection. If you can get to know the mob, well then that's the first step of supporting mob. And also free our mob from juvenile systems, free them from jail. Don't outcast them or send them away, put them in these. I get there's a lot of programs out there. The only program they need is country. Country fixes everything. Country's our solution. Country needs to hear its children laugh. All she's heard her children is cry. That's all she's done, Country needs to hear its children laugh. And I have had it up to here with seeing all these young mob in jail and systems that aren't their systems from impacts that weren't done by or caused by their people. Country needs to hear its people laugh. And we need that. We need to spread that laughter and that love. She needs to hear her love. She needs to feel her love. And by getting to know your mob is the first step to giving country that laughter and that love that she so needs, because she's our mother. She wants to hear her children laugh and love. She wants to hear them cry too, but only when it's the right time to cry, through those rites of passages, through those lessons of learning, not through pain and unforced punishments. So, that's my message.
Wow, that is so profound and so meaningful, and you're very motivating, you're inspirational, Malachi, so that's an excellent way to wrap up today. Before we go, do you want to tell everyone about your podcast and where people can find out about you?
Yeah, Reefcast. Yeah, Reefcast, you can check us out on Instagram, watch all our full episodes on YouTube, check us out on TikTok, and it's just a platform to provide a voice for the voiceless, and that's our mob. They can speak freely about any issues they want to speak, how they want to speak, about whatever it is that's on their mind, and spread their ideas and share their ideas and their concerns and issues. As we say at Reefcast, we're bringing you all real stories, real issues from real people.
Amazing. All right, well, thanks very much for your time today.
I hope you enjoyed our chat today. Listening back, I couldn't help but notice nature tuning in at all the right moments. Like an angry bird screeching loudly when Malachi talked about unfair legislation, and kookaburras laughing continuously at the end when he was talking about the need for country to hear her children laughing. If you're enjoying this podcast, please subscribe to this series and follow Word on the Reef on Instagram to get notified when it's time for our next adventure. This is a not-for-profit passion project, so if you enjoyed it, please write a review, share, and tell your friends. If you'd like to get involved in action to help protect the Great Barrier Reef, visit www.fightforourreef.org.au. If you'd like to sponsor this podcast, please consider becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month over at patreon.com/Word on the Reef podcast. You'll get a shout out, and the proceeds will help towards covering costs like podcast hosting, email hosting, website hosting, and so on. That's all for now. Best fishes, and see you next time.